Indeed, it's a great pleasure for me to introduce a legend, a leader par excellence, Mr. Dayanand. He has had a checkered career, rising from the levels of, I would say so, starting as a representative and then executive and then going on to lead as a managing director of a multinational company of GSK in African region. Now, the next 45-minute session of his can ideally change your life forever. He has just come back from setting up an 3,000 crore MNC company for their operations in India, rolled it out, successfully seen that things have started happening. He is here to share his expertise and valuable insights into what really makes a business. What are the challenges for us as probably small-time businessmen or medium-sized businessmen, which he has seen, which he has handled, which probably he has mentored many number of people. And it should be a privilege for all of us to listen to him and learn from him. My request is, let's all pay our full attention for the next 45 minutes at least, so that we gain the maximum. And thank you, Daya, for accepting our request in taking this session and giving us your insight. Thank you so much. It's all over to Daya. Please, put up your hands together for Daya, please.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Thank you, Suresh. Generally, the first thing I need is, I need your permission for 45 minutes. I know this is not the time for leadership talk, honestly. It's 7 o'clock. But, so can I have your permission for 45 minutes? I'll try and finish it before, right? Okay. Thank you very much. See the impact of created in your exercises. Excellent. Generally, people ask you to rate them or rate a site or rate an outcome at the end of something. All right, but Suresh has already given a 5-star rating beginning, which means it puts a lot of pressure on me to measure up to it, okay? What you see on screen gives you a hint of what we will see in the next 45 minutes, okay? This is a very familiar site or scene in Chennai. Can you recognize this? Kattipara Junction. What do you call that stuff, which is flyover? Butterfly, great separator, infinity. Yeah, so that's a different way to look at it. You're close. So we have used that flyover, that road, but we may not know that it's called as a multi-level grade separator. He was very close. So what I'm going to speak to you today is something that you're doing, that you have done. It's not new to you. But you may not know that, is this how it's called? So it will be a certain perspective about what you're already doing. All of us engage with other professionals. Let's say you want to do business with someone else, right? Potential partner. You don't know that person very much. What qualities do you think you expect from them, him or her? Any words, what qualities would you want from? Sorry? Integrity, genuineness. Anything else? Experience. What else do you want from that person? You don't know that person much. Same vibe. Reliability. Transparency. So like-minded, reliable, transparent, genuine, integrity. Right? Who said trust? Trust. You don't think of money, investment, what's their background. You first think of this and then go on to other things. All right? Just remember this as we go through what we're going to see. Today's learning will happen in 3 phases. One, I'm choosing my words very carefully, you may get to hear something new. Oh, I didn't know this. Or as we speak, or as I speak, or as others speak, there'll be something that'll going on in your mind. Our mind is never calm. So there'll be a light bulb. There is a reflection in myself. That could be the second way you will pick up something today. Or the kind of discussion we will have. Peer learning is tremendous. When Suresh asked me last week, look, would you run this session? I took a day before I told him yes, that's the truth. Because before I address this audience, I think pretty hard. Because I can't take something that's just frivolous. Because the wisdom that's in this room is huge. So if something has to appeal, then it has to have depth. So I said, look, just give me a day. I'll come back to you. All right? So these are the 3 ways. Hopefully you will pick up something today. What do you see on screen? How would you interpret this? What is this? A person is wearing a mask.
When we see him, we think about so many things running in our mind.
So you're saying there's a person who is wearing a mask, there is someone else who's interacting with this person. Excellent. Anything else?
Perception of the person may be bigger than that is the thing when somebody speaks to us, we only receive what perceived by.
So we receive what is perceived, and you said the perception could be really bigger than the true person. Excellent. All these are correct. I'll come to that. Anything else? Sorry?
On the human side, the wife is shouting, but the husband is behind and asking something.
I don't want to comment on this. I'm sure he...
Ranga, what is saying?
Sorry, you said something. So what you see is not really real. What you see is not really real. Look beyond. So all of you are correct, right? Do we wear masks? Have you worn a mask? Do I wear a mask? Have you? Right? Why do you wear a mask? Isn't that, you said, look, you really want trust, you wanted integrity, you wanted transparency, but why do you wear a mask? Sorry?
To hide your real self.
Why would you do that?
Maybe circumstances are a need to do that.
So he says there is a circumstance where you need to do that. For example, my daughter, who's 19, she was just flying to Chennai on a flight. There was a middle-aged, over-enthusiastic gentleman sitting by her side wanting to know, where are you going, what are you doing? She told me, look, I just shut him off, saying that I'm not interested. So she wore a mask, and it was useful for her. Right? So your point is right. Why else do we use a mask?
For our privacy.
Privacy. Who said privacy? Why do you need privacy?
Private secrecy.
Because
Secrecy.
cannot be open to everyone. There might be certain information.
Okay. So 2 things. One, there could be some information.
Expose our vulnerabilities to them.
So you said there could be a secret, or you don't want to give everything off. You said there could be vulnerabilities. Why would I feel vulnerable?
Never know about the other person.
Sorry.
Never know about the other person.
So the other person might take you an advantage was what Rajaram said. You said, yeah, you might never know the other person. So the point that you're raising, sorry, one last point, yeah.
Persona means wearing a mask.
Yeah.
If you don't want our emotions straight away get out, so probably mask is not to be seen as a negative, maybe positive also.
Absolutely.
Polish, expressing a positive.
Got it. So all that you have said is absolutely valid, right? So, Rajaram, you mentioned the word vulnerability. This is how it's defined in the dictionary. The capability of getting wounded or hurt, physically or emotionally. All right? All of us are vulnerable. And we have our own defense mechanisms to protect ourselves from getting hurt. All right? So, what I'm going to share today or discuss is vulnerability and leadership. Your businesses or our businesses are vulnerable. I'm not going to discuss that, but I'm going to discuss about us, which is leadership, the core, and vulnerability. All right? What comes to your mind when I say you as a leader and your vulnerabilities? What comes to your mind? Any thoughts? Just warming up? Yeah?
Vulnerability, somebody who's vulnerable basically is insecure.
Is insecure.
If he is not insecure, the question of vulnerability will never come, whatever the situation.
Fair point. So, how do we make ourselves secure or at peace with ourselves? That's a point. Okay? Now, before I get on to this, sorry.
Leadership of a situation.
Agree? Agree?
When I am not comfortable in a given situation,
I may be a leader, but I still feel vulnerable.
Yeah. So his point is, it's situational. I may be a leader. I'm still vulnerable. Yes. But what do you do about that? How do you respond to that vulnerability?
In such case, I reflect upon myself and how do I handle it,
Yep.
how I could have handled it,
Excellent. So
both ways.
there is a what should have been or what could have been and what is. So that's
What
the
I-
swing that happens.
Normally, I reflect upon what goof up I made
Yeah.
and how could I could have avoided this.
Great. So before we get on to this, I just want you to watch a 10-minute video, right, on vulnerability. Just pick up some of the points. It's about our lives. While this lady speaks about vulnerability, it's about what we go through. Yeah. Absolutely. The fear of getting hurt, the fear of getting, let's say, exposed, or fear of getting ashamed, or whatever. Yeah. So the way the dictionary defines is this. This is just a dictionary definition, but we get it intuitively what vulnerable is. All right? So just see this. It's quite interesting, and we'll take it on from there.
So I'll start with this. A couple of years ago, an event planner called me because I was going to do a speaking event. And she called and she said, I'm really struggling with how to write about you on the little flyer. And I thought, you know, I am a storyteller. I'm a qualitative researcher. I collect stories. That's what I do. And maybe stories are just data with a soul, you know, and maybe I'm just a storyteller. And I'm going to talk to you today. We're talking about expanding perception. And so I want to talk to you and tell some stories about a piece of my research that fundamentally expanded my perception and really actually changed the way that I live and love and work and parent. So where I started was with connection, because by the time you're a social worker for 10 years, what you realize is that connection is why we're here. It's what gives purpose and meaning to our lives. This is what it's all about. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to start with connection. Well, you know that situation where you get an evaluation from your boss and she tells you 37 things that you do really awesome and one thing that you can't, you know, an opportunity for growth. And all you can think about is that opportunity for growth, right? Well, apparently this is the way my work went as well, because when you ask people about love, they tell you about heartbreak. When you ask people about belonging, they'll tell you their most excruciating experiences of being excluded. And when you ask people about connection, the stories they told me were about disconnection. So very quickly, really about 6 weeks into this research, I ran into this unnamed thing that absolutely unraveled connection in a way that I didn't understand or had never seen. And so I pulled back out of the research and thought, I need to figure out what this is. And it turned out to be shame. And shame is really easily understood as the fear of disconnection. Is there something about me that if other people know it or see it, that I won't be worthy of connection? The things I can tell you about it, it's universal. We all have it. The only people who don't experience shame have no capacity for human empathy or connection. No one wants to talk about it, and the less you talk about it, the more you have it. What underpinned this shame, this I'm not good enough, which we all know that feeling, I'm not blank enough, I'm not thin enough, rich enough, beautiful enough, smart enough, promoted enough. The thing that underpinned this was excruciating vulnerability. This idea of, in order for connection to happen, we have to allow ourselves to be seen, really seen. I wrote a book, I published a theory, but something was not okay. And what it was is that if I roughly took the people I interviewed and divided them into people who really have a sense of worthiness, that's what this comes down to, a sense of worthiness. They have a strong sense of love and belonging. And folks who struggle for it, and folks who are always wondering if they're good enough. There was only one variable that separated the people who have a strong sense of love and belonging and the people who really struggle for it, and that was the people who have a strong sense of love and belonging believe they're worthy of love and belonging. That's it. They believe they're worthy. And to me, the hard part of the one thing that keeps us out of connection is our fear that we're not worthy of connection. And so here's what I found. What they had in common was a sense of courage. And I want to separate courage and bravery for you for a minute. Courage, the original definition of courage, when it first came into the English language, it's from the Latin word cur, meaning heart. And the original definition was to tell the story of who you are with your whole heart. And so these folks had, very simply, the courage to be imperfect. They had the compassion to be kind to themselves first and then to others, because as it turns out, we can't practice compassion with other people if we can't treat ourselves kindly. And the last was they had connection, and this was the hard part, as a result of authenticity. They were willing to let go of who they thought they should be in order to be who they were, which is, you have to absolutely do that for connection. The other thing that they had in common was this. They fully embraced vulnerability. They believed that what made them vulnerable made them beautiful. They didn't talk about vulnerability being comfortable, nor did they really talk about it being excruciating, as I had heard earlier in the shame interviewing. They just talked about it being necessary. They talked about the willingness to say, I love you first. The willingness to do something where there are no guarantees. The willingness to breathe through waiting for the doctor to call after your mammogram. The willing to invest in a relationship that may or may not work out. They thought this was fundamental. And I know that vulnerability is kind of the core of shame and fear and our struggle for worthiness, but it appears that it's also the birthplace of joy, of creativity, of belonging, of love. So this is what I learned. We numb vulnerability. When we're waiting for the call, it was funny, I sent something out on Twitter and on Facebook that says, how would you define vulnerability? What makes you feel vulnerable? And within an hour and a half, I had 150 responses. Because I wanted to know, what's out there. Having to ask my husband for help because I'm sick and we're newly married. Initiating sex with my husband, initiating sex with my wife. Being turned down, asking someone out. Waiting for the doctor to call back, getting laid off, laying off people. This is the world we live in. We live in a vulnerable world. And one of the ways we deal with it is we numb vulnerability. The problem is, and I learned this from the research, that you cannot selectively numb emotion. You can't say, here's the bad stuff. Here's vulnerability, here's grief, here's shame, here's fear, here's disappointment. I don't want to feel these. I'm going to have a couple of beers and a banana nut muffin. You can't numb those hard feelings without numbing the other affects or emotions. You cannot selectively numb. So when we numb those, we numb joy. We numb gratitude. We numb happiness. And then we are miserable and we are looking for purpose and meaning. And then we feel vulnerable. So then we have a couple of beers and a banana nut muffin. And it becomes this dangerous cycle. One of the things that I think that we need to think about is why and how we numb. And it doesn't just have to be addiction. The other thing we do is we make everything that's uncertain, certain. Religion has gone from a belief in faith and mystery to certainty. I'm right, you're wrong, shut up. That's it. Just certain. The more afraid we are, the more vulnerable we are, the more afraid we are. This is what politics looks like today. There's no discourse anymore. There's no conversation. There's just blame. You know how blame is described in the research? A way to discharge pain and discomfort. We perfect if there's anyone who wants their life to look like this, it would be me. But it doesn't work. And we perfect, most dangerously, our children. Let me tell you what we think about children. They're hardwired for struggle when they get here. When you hold those perfect little babies in your hand, our job is not to say, look at her, she's perfect. My job is just to keep her perfect, make sure she makes the tennis team by 5th grade and Yale by 7th grade. That's not our job. Our job is to look and say, you know what? You're imperfect and you're wired for struggle, but you are worthy of love and belonging. That's our job. Show me a generation of kids raised like that and we'll end the problems I think that we see today. We pretend that what we do doesn't have an effect on people. We do that in our personal lives. We do that corporate, whether it's a bailout, an oil spill, a recall. We pretend like what we're doing doesn't have a huge impact on other people. I would say to companies, this is not our first rodeo, people. We just need you to be authentic and real and say, we're sorry, we'll fix it. But there's another way, and I'll leave you with this. This is what I have found. To let ourselves be seen, deeply seen, vulnerably seen. To love with our whole hearts, even though there's no guarantee. And that's really hard, and I can tell you as a parent, that's excruciatingly difficult. To practice gratitude and joy in those moments of kind of terror when we're wondering, can I love you this much? Can I believe in this passionately? Can I be this fierce about this? Just to be able to stop and instead of catastrophizing what might happen, to say, I'm just so grateful. Because to feel this vulnerable means I'm alive. And the last, which I think is probably the most important, is to believe that we're enough. Because when we work from a place, I believe, that says, I'm enough, then we stop screaming and start listening. We're kinder and gentler to the people around us, and we're kinder and gentler to ourselves. That's all I have. Thank
So
you.
the reason I played this video is, you're all leaders. We're all leaders. And the core of leadership is connection. With the people who report to me, I report to someone else, my customers, my consumers, with anybody it's connection. And connections don't happen if you're not comfortable with this. All right? And as she says, the root of love, joy, trust, empathy, connection, courage, compassion, authenticity, belonging, creativity, the core is vulnerability. Just being fine with saying, I'm not perfect and I'm okay with this. And you can see me that way. All right? Now, I just want to go to circa 2006. We are doing fine on time. This is about 18 years back. A little bit from my own life. I spent 23 years in GlaxoSmithKline. Started as management trainee, quit as managing director for West Africa, but that journey was exciting. Huge amount of learning. I spent 11 years in sales, which is town after town after town, appoint distributors, go sell Horlicks, Crocin, whatever. Typically how FMCG works, consumer goods works, right? There are 2,000 distributors and you keep invoicing these stocks all over. So 11 years in sales. And one fine day, the managing director told me, look, you're doing a good job, fine. Your aspiration is to become a managing director one day. You're a senior sales manager. Now you need to prove to me that you can build brands. So I'm going to transfer you as general manager marketing. In the consumer goods industry, sales and marketing are like day and night. And after 11 years in sales, they moved me as general manager marketing. And I didn't know anything about marketing. And I was given a portfolio, which was Boost. There is a brand called Boost. It's a chocolate drink. You would have heard about that? Yes, it is still the secret of my energy. I loved managing that brand. And there were a few other brands that were given me. So in my portfolio, Boost was the biggest brand. And I moved there as general manager marketing. I had 4 people reporting to me. Collectively, they had 20 years of brand management experience, and I had nil. I was naked. I felt jittery. I told my wife, look, I may not succeed. I don't know what will happen if I don't succeed. And it took me 6 months to take off and just be comfortable, I'm okay in this role. It was after 6 months I started enjoying it because I thought, okay, now I know something about it. So during those 6 months, I had to go upfront. How do you assess a media agency? How do you do media planning? How do you shoot an advertising? We were supposed to manage celebrities. How do you manage celebrities? How do you write contracts? How do you terminate celebrities? How do you write a script? How do you pay bonuses to media and ad agencies? How do you critically evaluate a television commercial? I didn't know anything. But those 6 months, I had to tell more, sorry, I don't know, please teach me, rather than saying, look, I know it. So those 6 months was unnerving, but was absolutely energizing. I grew as a person to saying, just be comfortable, it's fine. That's the real you, they'll accept you. But my team, I should give them, they gave an amazing support. So this is what I realized. If I'm genuine, I think you said genuine, trustworthy, transparent, honest, integrity. I think rest of the people also respect you for that. Because there's no one hanging around who is perfect. So this was my own story, which was an absolutely amazing transformation for me. Anybody wants to have a go? Any of your stories where you felt vulnerable, you were comfortable, but you grew through it? Anyone wants? Sorry? Every entrepreneur goes through that. So we don't need to go to business school, to be honest. Life teaches us so many things. So I agree with you. Absolutely. But if you look around, there used to be days, maybe 40 years, where a lot of leadership was alpha male. You're perfect. You can go on stage and scream. You thump the desk and, everybody will follow you. I think times have changed now. And the reason I'm discussing this is we're all leaders who are managing or leading people who are male, female, in their 20s, or sometimes as interns, they come as late teenagers. So how do we manage them in this changing world? That's why I thought I'll touch upon this. Now, this lady shared her struggles as a mom, as a leader, and as a woman in a male-dominated society, in many leadership roles. She was very candid. I can do this, I can't do this. Look, here I failed, right? We all know about this gentleman, right? People have written a lot about his imperfections as much as they've written about his perfections. But he was someone who possibly said, I'm an ordinary man who raised my level to, Mahatma. Again, very real. Again, very real. So we do see people, a lot of times we respect them. So if I'm vulnerable and I'm real, I can still be successful. It need not be, I need to be Superman, Superwoman, right? I'll walk on fire, okay? Now, for example, this lady, she said that she wanted to work. She couldn't work. Those are what I call tribulations a woman would have, just as, let's say, she's in her 20s. But people accepted her. This gentleman, we do know. So this point is about, if you look around in today's world, there are people who show they're vulnerable, they're real, and they're very successful. Good role models. Recently I was in a forum where this CEO who has founded an amazing national coaching federation, extremely successful organization, and he said, he's 70, he said, look, my team says I'm not good at promoting myself. I'm not going on LinkedIn and writing about myself. He said, look, I just can't do it. Maybe I have self-limiting beliefs, but I can't stand up on a stage and address like that. So he openly acknowledged that he's not Superman. And in the Madras Management Association, one of the panel reviews, a very senior, seasoned CEO of a Tamil Nadu company, very successful, he said on the stage, I'm not a good negotiator. When it comes to negotiations, I'm a little bit kind. So my team says, look, you move out, we will negotiate for you, and allow them to do that. So in other words, they had the guts to accept where they're good, where they're not really good. Again, being real. But there are a few watch outs on this. When I'm saying I'm vulnerable and I don't know you, there could be a communication gap. You might actually think, oh, this person is really weak. But it's okay. So there is a risk that I may be misinterpreted as not strong. It's fine. But I'll be real. Over a period of time, I'll get understood. Or there are some organizations I've seen very closely where vulnerability is not accepted. You need to be strong. You can't show weakness. They know you can't do certain things, but you still have to stand up and say, look, I can do everything. So company cultures, that's a watch out if you're in that. Sometimes society itself pushes you. Right? There was in about a year back in a common social forum, we were supposed to move chairs and tables somewhere, and two ladies came and shifted a couple of chairs, tables. Another gentleman came and said, look, madam, please don't do it. So they were a little surprised, but they stepped back, so they all moved. So the gentleman told me, look, women are gentle, don't ask them to do it. These are perceptions, these are gender biases. The society, or in some cases, it could be a community, could be a bunch of people, could project it, look, vulnerability now won't accept you. It's okay. So either individual communication gaps or organization culture or societal pressures could mean vulnerability is not accepted. But that's their problem, not mine. What does the world talk about vulnerability? Just go through it. These are brilliant quotes. Vulnerability is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of courage and authenticity. It is the birthplace of trust, empathy, and love. Simon Sinek, obviously we know who Simon Sinek is, very powerful. In vulnerability, we find the courage to be real. Very true. It's the catalyst for our personal and spiritual growth. I don't know if you have read Eckhart Tolle's books. He's quite an evolved soul, extremely powerful. Thich Nhat Hanh, who was the Vietnamese monk, he recently attained Samadhi, is a great gateway to compassion and understanding. Now, this is what the world says. So, this is not new, it exists. As I said, Katipara Junction, we use it. We just didn't know it was called a multi-level grade separator. I'm sure you practice authenticity, you practice vulnerability. It's just that we may not know if it has a certain perspective like this. If you take our families, have you seen the vulnerabilities of our parents? Yes or no? We still love them, we still follow them, they still inspire us, they still respect us. Do you think our children know our vulnerabilities? Yeah. They follow us. So he says they exploit. Okay. She said, look, sometimes it's just useful to have a mask, so it's useful to exploit vulnerability. Yeah, I agree. But they still follow us. They still respect us. Right? So we practice this at home. So it's not new. So is this a Western concept? This whole vulnerability, later trend. This is trending for 20 years plus, or 25 years. The first time I heard vulnerability was around 2005. It was not a buzzword. But now it's a buzzword. You go anywhere, people will talk about authentic leadership. They'll talk about vulnerability. It's just become a buzzword. But in our case, in Bhagavad Gita, when Arjuna asks Krishna, look, what qualities do I have if I need to get Brahma Jnanam? Krishna lists 20 qualities. These are there. Amanitvam, Adambitvam, Arjavam, Kshanti, Kshama. So two of the top qualities he describes. Amanitvam. Manitvam is manaha. Manitvam is, that self-importance thing. So the problem is manitvam is about exaggerated opinion of oneself. I think someone mentioned this, not being the true self, or bigger than, you said, Rajaram. Possibly the person is bigger than what he thinks. Underlying doubt about my qualifications. Not accepting myself. The opposite of it is amanitvam. So if I have amanitvam, I get purified. The second quality he describes is adambitvam. So dambitvam is pretense. Dambitvam is trying to project an image which is bigger than what I truly am. But if I have adambitvam, I get purified. So these are just two qualities he says. You follow this, this is your purification process for you to attain jnanam. So this is not new, even from an Indian lens. Right? So why am I speaking here now? Because you are leaders, you're possibly charting the course for your company, your society for the next, I don't know how many decades. So it's good for us to reflect. What's the shadow I'm going to cast? If I feel vulnerable and I'm completely fine with it, my company is going to be okay with it. So you will impact organization culture and hopefully you'll have a richer life. Now that's the reason why I thought I'll touch upon this topic. Not that you don't know. We are doing perfectly fine on time. This is just the last 2 slides. There is proof. There is proof that if you are vulnerable, if you're real, no hang-ups, no mask, you get some of your best connections done. And all of you have undergone it. And I can tell you, and I'll tell you why. Where have you made your best of connections? When have you made the best of connections in your life? School days. Playing. School days. Sports. BBB. Agree. So this is my grade 12 school photograph. It's 1984-85. I finished school in I finished school in 85. So there is Rajaram in this. So we were classmates. So, both of us. Okay, no, this is not a quiz, okay? So maybe across lunch, dinner you can have a quiz. Now the point I'm saying is, when we were in school, do you think all our friends knew our vulnerabilities? No? Yes? Did we hide anything? No? Yes? No? Sometimes? So, yes and no. So, that's possibly an age where you don't know too much how to manipulate yourself. More or less you're there, right? There could be something that you'll hide because you feel, no, I don't want it. But predominantly, you were clean. You're pure. You had no mask. You were 100% vulnerable. Because each one appreciated the vulnerability, you possibly had the best connection that still lasts with you today. Some of your best friends are still in school. I thought I'll share with this because all of us have actually gone through it, experienced the joy of connection arising out of vulnerability. If you can rekindle that, imagine what kind of leaders would you be with your team. All right? So I'll leave you with this. Everybody speaks about authentic leadership. The root is this: the willingness to let go of who you thought you should be in order to actually be who you are. This is the core of our existence. This is the core of your leadership shadow on your team. So, in the beginning I shared this. Sometimes I look in the mirror, I think like maybe I'm Superman. But this is where we are. The more we are closer to seeing the true us, we'll have a richer life, hopefully an amazing leadership, shadow, and the legacy you will leave with your team would be indelible, right? So thank you for your attendance. We'll close it right now.
Wonderful. That is wonderful, really. Thank you, Dayanand.